My name's Joel Sherman. I'm with Evan Schwartzmiller, and this is the Invent Podcast. On today's episode of the Invent Podcast, Evan and I discuss the 3 reasons we run 40 to 70 miles every week. First, we talk about the physical benefits of long-distance running. Then, we discuss the meditative and mindful elements of our training. And finally, we close by talking about how it has allowed us to live intentionally in other aspects of our life. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, so today's episode, we're going to be talking about why we decide to run, everything kind of involved around that. And we broke it down into 3 reasons. 1 is the physical aspects of it. 2 is the mindful and meditative aspects of it. And then the third one is how it's affected other aspects of our life, how we live intentionally in other ways. So let's get right into it. I think we should talk about the physical aspects of it at first.
Yeah, we should definitely start off with that. Running is one of those things that a lot of people dread. It's a punishment in a lot of other sports, for football and baseball and stuff like that. It's a punishment. Oh, you did this, go run. And then it's not something fun to do. It's like, a chore, worse than that. It's not seen as something that you do often or you try not to do, but as runners, you really begin to appreciate the physical aspects of it. Your cardio improves, your lung capacity. That's one thing. Breathing, being able to walk up a flight of stairs and then not be out of breath by the time you get to the top. That's definitely something that, once you start running a lot, you can really appreciate. Because before, even if you lift weights and go to the gym, it's a whole different game when you're running.
I think one thing that you said that really kind of sparked something I just thought of was the aspect of what people dread running and how it's a punishment. And Evan hasn't read it yet, but I read a book earlier this year called Born to Run by Christopher McDougall, and it kind of goes into how primitively we are creatures bred to run long distance. Like naturally, that's just how our human body is made up of. And there's a lot of different scientific approaches to look at that, like at your Achilles heel and how your head is shaped and how your tailbone works as a counterweight. And there's a ton of stuff that I'm not going to get into, but I think it kind of that's a very interesting point. Like in athletics and other sports and stuff, we train to be strong and we train to be as fast as possible. But a lot of people don't realize as human beings, we are bred to be long distance runners, and just how it doesn't matter how fast you go. If you can, if you run long distances, how good for your health it actually is. And that plays out in our life. Our heart rate is in the 40s beats per minute. It's not a big deal walking 10 miles around, doing a 10-mile distance, whether it's running or walking or whatever, because, we're kind of, I guess, used to those circumstances. And now reflecting on it, running is just such a big part of my physical state, and I don't really realize it.
Yeah, it's definitely, it harkens back to that hunter-gatherer time, in our distant past, when obviously you're not going to catch up to a horse or something, or something, a big prey like that. They're going to be able to out sprint you any day. No human's ever going to be able to catch up to anything like that. A quadruped, our bipedalness kind of limits our speed, but being able to run 10 miles, 20 miles to then catch that prey, it's amazing.
It's very cool. It's very, very cool. Yeah. If you guys are unfamiliar with a lot of the stuff that we're talking about as far as the human body and how it's conditioned for endurance running, definitely try to read up on that, because that's some of the most interesting things that I've ever read. And it kind of opens your eyes up to show that everybody and every human being, I think more so now it might not be as true because of how our society has kind of changed us over the years, and how we might not be as bred for running as we once were. But I think it's super cool that everybody can just get up and start running. It's something everybody has access to.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things, if you have a good pair of legs, you can run, and that's, It's not like football or hockey that requires a bunch of pads and all this equipment and stuff. It's you are your sport, and because of that, it's versatile. You can run anywhere, no matter where you live. Even if you live in the city or out in the country, it doesn't matter. You can run anywhere. It's not like you have to be on a football field or on a soccer field. You can run on sidewalks. Hard surfaces aren't the best to run on, but still, you can do it. As long as you're smart about it. So it's great.
And another thing about the whole physical aspect of it is it's very close to home for me because I'm just going to try to get into it briefly because I think I can open up a little bit more about it on a later episode. But how physical activity is such a big part of my life. In high school, I went through 5 MCL tears over the course of a year and a half. It put me out of my junior year. I couldn't play, but I ended up managing for the soccer team. My senior year, I had to play with 2 knee braces just so my knees didn't come out. And that kind of ruined my dreams of playing soccer at a college level. And before that, my sophomore year of high school, before I experienced, through these knee injuries, I ended up losing 50 pounds, and mainly through lifting weights. And it just became a big part of my life. And I actually didn't get into running until almost 3 years after I lost the weight. But the love for physical activity is still very present in a lot of aspects of my life. And losing weight was crucial for me to put me on this path of trail running and ultra running. And I understand that not everybody wants to run. I understand that it's boring. I understand that they don't see it as fun as playing sports with all your friends and stuff. But I just think it's a very raw form of physical activity, and that's what attracts me to it.
Yeah, for me, my story is a little different. I out of middle school, I was going into high school, and I wanted to be on the football team. That was one of the things I wanted to do. But then one of my friends, hey, why don't you come out and do summer conditioning for cross country? And against it, honestly, I was like, cross country, I'm gonna have to run all this stuff. It's gonna be terrible. But it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. It was a great team. I love everyone on that team. It was really, really close. But I was so immersed in running after freshman year. It was all running all year because you did cross country, and then you went into indoor track during the winter, and then you went into spring. You did track. And then over the summer, we did summer conditioning, and it was all year, 4-season running. So for 4 years, that was my life, was running. And I never necessarily got tired of it. There were a lot of aches and pains, but it was just one of those things because we had such a tight team. We were so close. It was not a distraction from it, but we could get through the running because we were so close. And the race, we did a 5K for cross country, but now that I'm getting into more longer distances, I'm noticing that it's easier to run alone, but then when you're running with a partner, you can still have that connection. You don't need that huge team of 30 people, to get through practice. You can be running by yourself or with someone and still, not be bored out of your mind.
And the thing that I really love about it is it's just so you can stick with it for so long. And I think there's a huge misconception in our society about how the age you need to be to compete athletically. And it goes to show runners who are 50, 60 years old running 70 to 100 miles at a time. And it's present in the fighting community too, martial arts, that men don't reach their peak physical performance until their 40s, late 20s, 30s, and early 40s. That's when they're at their prime. And I think that's something that's so cool because it's something you can stick with. You and I are only 18 years old, and we haven't even gotten close to our. You're 19. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was about to say
we haven't even gotten close to what we're capable of running, and that's just something that I really look forward to. It's because it seems like we're going to be running in November in less than a year, but 10 years from now, we could still be doing this, training the same way, doing the same thing, and just that much better and more prepared.
Well, football. You can play it in middle school, You play like pee wee football, but then you play in middle school and high school, and then if you're lucky, college, and then if you're even luckier and you're good enough, you can play NFL. But the number of people, I mean, for the vast majority of people, that's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So playing football, a sport like that, it's very finite, very limited to your schooling years. Whereas running, you can do that, from the time you can run until you're no longer physically able to run.
60,
70 years old. I know when we were doing cross country, we ran in a battlefield. Our high school was built right next to a battlefield, and there was a bunch of beautiful trails all throughout this battlefield. And almost every day we were on those trails. And there was always this gentleman, I don't know his exact age, but he was definitely getting close to 70, if not 70. And he was out there 3 or 4 times a week. We saw him, and it was just amazing because we, all these young high school kids running cross country, and then on the same trail, doing the same exact thing was this 70-year-old guy, and it was really amazing because you're never going to go to a football game and see a 65-year-old, lineman or anything like that, or running back or anything like that. So it really goes to show that running is, while it's intensive, it's something you can do for a very long time.
And I think, that's kind of a good segue into our next point, which are the mindful aspects of it and how it kind of benefits you, because that's something that's also something you have to work on for a lifetime, is your mental state and your mindfulness. And personally, for me, running in combination with practicing mindfulness and meditation, it has helped me better control my mind, my brain on a consistent basis. And what I mean by that is I feel like I'm a lot happier a lot more often. I feel like when something negative happens to me, it doesn't affect me as long, and it's easier for me to work through those emotions. And I have a lot easier time quieting down my brain, like when I'm trying to go to sleep or whatever the situation may be. And one thing that I've actually been trying to get into a lot more recently is called active listening, which is listening to someone with the absence of your inner voice. So shutting it down and just letting their words go into your brain and you truly listening to them. And running helps me do that because it kind of gets me into a meditative, mindful state. And if we're going 10 miles, I'm in that state for an hour straight where I'm completely focused. I'm completely focused on my breathing. I'm focused on the present moment. And it's all super good for my brain. And it's a great way to separate myself from the constant stress that we all deal with each day. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's something that, coming out of cross country, that cross country track background, when you were on the starting line, you had all these nerves, how's this race going to go? Am I going to get last? Am I going to get first? How's it going to go? And even during the race, there was all these, I'm getting passed, I'm passing people. There was a lot going on. But now that I'm running these distances, it's a lot more mindful. I know you're not focusing on as much things going on around you. It's more inward. And running these long distances allows you to have time to think. And I think in our modern world, that's not something we have a lot. We're a lot of times we're plugged in to the computer, whatever. But running out in nature, even if you're not in nature, if you're in the city, it's easy to get distracted. But you still have that time alone when you're running to think.
And even running through the city with all these noise and all this pollution that's kind of stimulating you, in a way, is also the same thing as meditating, because when you run and you're focusing on your breathing, and even though these stimulus are coming in and you're trying to process all of them, you're kind of doing it with a lack of judgment in a way. Like, you're not really listening to what the sound is or what the words were. Like, they're coming in, but if you're focusing on how you're breathing, what your body feels like, none of that stuff matters, and you're still in that state of mind. So exactly what you say, it doesn't have to be in nature, and it's just kind of the act of getting out and being present and understanding and feeling your body in the moment you're in.
Yeah, that's really good. For our cross country team, we were, like I said, we're always in that battlefield, which I was talking about, which is forested. There were some open fields, but for the most part, it was forest, and we really lucked out because that was such a beautiful place. There were streams and brooks, and it was really amazing. And there's a lot of wildlife there. But having the opportunity to run there almost every day definitely made me appreciate nature more. And if you ever do decide to get into running, I would advise you to go find a place. Even if you live in a city, maybe find a park or something where there's more of a natural setting to run in. Not all the time, but if you can get the chance, definitely do that, because there's something very therapeutic about running through nature, about running through trails through the woods and stuff like that.
I also think it's hard to talk about the mindfulness aspect of running without talking about like the runner's high, and going to the nature aspect of it. It's very easy for me to get into that, like, I almost want to say like euphoric state when I'm out running on a trail, like no phone, there's nothing, it's just me, or I'm running with you or whoever I'm running with, and we're just in that moment. And I keep bringing it back to being in that moment and practicing that mindfulness and understanding where you are in that certain scenario. I was listening to an interview with a guy named Mike Posner. I'm sure you guys know who he is. He's a musical artist, and he said that there's been a few moments in his life where he's experienced like this pure bliss and happy emotion. And I've had very few experiences where that's happened to me, but everything is just incredible. And when you have things like that happen, coming back down to like this normal state, or the default setting, I guess you could say, of like regular life, it makes you kind of like regular life a little bit less. And it's very hard to describe it if you haven't ever experienced it. But running and meditation allows me to get into those states very quickly, and it's kind of addicting to run. Like 3 months ago, if you asked me to run 20 miles, that's like I wouldn't even consider it. But now, the way that it makes you feel during and after, and going back to the physical benefits of it, it's just like so easy to do now. To be like, yeah, I'm gonna go run 20 miles because I understand how good and happy I'll feel afterwards.
Yeah, and those 20-mile runs aren't without their aches and pains, but because we're so mindful, and because we're so, it's weird because you're focused on running, you're focused on your form, your breathing, but at the same time you let go of a lot of those distractions in life. You let go of your phone, social media, things like that. So while we're talking about being mindful, there's also a sense of mindful less, like there's you're not as mindful of certain things. And I think that's also important, because if you go about your day, you can be pretty overwhelmed by everything. And if you're one of those people that just wants to have a break from that, to get away from that, running 20 miles is a lot, but even a quick 3-mile jog, if you can do that once or twice a week, that will help.
The analogy that I just thought of now, which I think would be a good thing to convey what we're trying to explain, is, so imagine in everyday life you're driving your car and the FM radio is on, and it doesn't matter what station. You have no idea what song's going to be played next. You don't know what the radio hosts are going to talk about. It's just all kind of hitting you and you're taking it in. When you go on a run, it's like plugging in your phone to the aux cord or hooking up to Bluetooth, and you decide what you get to listen to and what gets played through that radio. And running is that in a way. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you take control of certain aspects of your mind. A lot of the time we're occupied by things, and that was a really good analogy. I'm thinking about that now, and that's like a really good way to think about it. And I think this is a good segue into our next thing, which is the, how would you describe this? It's hard.
Running allows us in other aspects of our life to do those other things intentionally. It changes our perception of all the other aspects in our life. And an easy example of this is, because of running, I've truly came to understand how hard work truly does pay off. I've seen how doing the work and being intentional about your actions and your training and all these things make an effect on your life. And I think we both have experienced those things firsthand.
Yeah, definitely. After this whole, getting started in this running, it instills in you this work ethic that I've never had. Like, I've always had a pretty good work ethic, I think. I've always, been pretty enthusiastic about things, even if, they're not exactly my favorite things to do. But running, especially these longer distances, has instilled in me this knowledge that I can do it. And I think that's something I've definitely struggled with is, taking on a task or, getting handed some assignment, like the dreading of it, like, oh, I can't do this, or it's going to take so long for me to do this. And for a while, it was the same thing with the runs, like the 20-mile runs. Oh, this is going to take so long. I can't do this. But the more you do it, the better you get at overcoming these barriers. And that's what running really is about. For me anyway, it's the ability to overcome a lot of the barriers in my life.
And to kind of paint a more clearer picture, if I want to run a 50-mile race, I have a clear, strict training regimen that I follow. I run this much distance Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I take Friday off. I do this distance Saturday, Sunday, and then week by week, I take it one day at a time. I get the distance in, and then when the race day comes, I'm prepared as I could be, and I do it. And it's not easy, but I've prepared myself for it, and I'm not surprised when I get it done. And in other aspects of my life, if I want to become an author, I write for 30 minutes every single day, and I get better little by little. I lay one brick at a time. If I want to become if I want to become a public speaker, I make intentional decisions to go out of my way to talk to people and engage with people and try to book those opportunities. I try to meet people and explain to them what I want to do and put my desires and goals out there into the world, because that's the only way that I'm going to get a return on my investment, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and running teaches you that. It teaches you the importance of putting in the work, not just now, but consistently. You're never going to go on, even if you go on a 5-mile run one time, that's not going to make you the world's best 5-mile runner ever. You have to put in the work, not just once, but over a period of time. And I know I'll speak for myself, but I think a lot of people struggle with that commitment, especially to physical exercise. A lot of people go to the gym regularly, but when it comes to running, it's easy to let go. It's easy to start, like, oh, I'm gonna run 3 times a week, and then the next thing you know, you're running once a week, and then the next thing you know, you're not running at all. And that goes for a lot of things, but running definitely instills in you that desire to keep it up,
and
keep going.
I know we touched on this last episode, but one way that's easy to counter that is by figuring out what you like to do. And I think a physical activity is super important, health-wise for everybody, but that doesn't mean everybody likes lifting weights, and that doesn't mean everybody likes running. Your way of getting physical exercise could be going and riding your scooter around town for 30 minutes. And it's just getting out and trying to be active in a way. And it's way easier to be intentional about it and keep consistent work, I guess, if it's something that you enjoy doing. And I enjoy running. And I know you and we went rock climbing yesterday, and it was so much fun, and we're going to go again today because we had such a good time, and it's easy for us to go and do it because it makes us content and happy and have joy. And that's fundamentally what we all need to do, is find something that brings that kind of happiness.
Yeah. And I was just about to mention the rock climbing because at one point we were up on, it was a rock wall, like a, unnatural rock wall. But I was up there and I couldn't get past this one grip. There was no way I was going to get past it. I was sitting up there, I was shaking, my muscles started to really hurt. And at one point I just kind of relaxed a little bit, I wasn't trying to move. I was just trying to sit there, and I kind of just, centered myself, and then I just exploded up and I reached it and I got it, and then I could pull myself up from there. But it's weird because even before we started training, if I was in that same position, I think I would have just like looked down and like, yeah, let me down now. Like I'm done. I can't get past it. But doing this training really has given me the confidence to be able to say, you know what, this is tough, but I can get over it.
It's very cool how, and most of the time there's so many instances where we probably don't even realize it, how training and sticking to this strict like regimen and being on top of everything and not procrastinating has affected all aspects of our life in like ways we don't even know. I haven't procrastinated doing a school assignment in the last 2 months, and that's probably attributed to that shift in my head where this is what I have to do, this is what I have to get done, so I'm going to get it done. And being efficient about it opens up so many different time slots, I guess, in your day that you can kind of relax or socialize or enjoy. And I think that a lot of people they're not fulfilled in the work that they do. And if you do intentional things by following the thing that you enjoy doing, you're happy in your work. And then when you get your work done, you're happy in however you choose to spend your time. And I think that's the power of intentionally working towards something.
Yeah, having that discipline in your life definitely allows you to enjoy the time off you have a little more, and it definitely allows you to get things done more efficiently. I know last semester at the beginning, I was not very organized when it came to getting work done. It was just kind of like, okay, I got this assignment, I'll work on it when I need to, and I left it at that. And then I'd get things done, but I always seemed to be scrambling to get things done at the last minute, or even if I would work on them beforehand, it would be kind of sloppy. Like, oh, I'm going to do this now, but then I'd get distracted and, I wouldn't pick it up till the next day. But learning to have that discipline in your life, you can, allot time to this, allot time to that, and you find that you're way more efficient and you get things done. You're like, wow, I have time to do this, that I didn't have time to do before. And it's not that you have to stop enjoying things too. I think that's stuff you trap a lot of people fall into. They say, I'm going to do this for this amount of time, and they forget to leave time for recreation.
And I think that's a big misconception that a lot of people don't realize. And I definitely don't want our message to get mixed up in that category, because I think that personally for me, working 12 hours and grinding and like being on top of everything and always trying to hustle after whatever I want, that appeals to me. That is a lifestyle that I find very attractive. And a lot of people would drive themselves into deep depression and lose people in their life and feel like they lose everything if they did that. Some people want to work for corporate America, work 40 hours a week and have a family and go on vacation every year, and they would be so happy doing that. And I think that the one message that if I died, that I would like to leave with the world would be to just figure out what brings you the most happiness and get after it by any means. You know what I mean?
Yeah, any means necessary. But there's
to a degree.
Yeah, to a degree. Yeah. You don't want to go too extreme with that. But there's definitely a good message in that. You can take control of your life, and doing something as simple as running, every week consistently, that allows you to take a bit of your life into your own hands. Like, you are able to say, this is my time. I can think. I can do this. I don't need to listen to anyone else. I can go run wherever I want. And there's definitely a freedom in running. Even if it's like, we keep going back, even if you're in a city, you can run anywhere. And then if you're in the forest, you can run through all the trails and stuff. And there's definitely a freedom associated with it. That's not really there in other sports. Football, you're limited to the field, and a lot of other sports, you're limited to the, arena space. But
the strategy to other aspects of sports kind of limits your ability to have that clear-headedness. And at least for me, in my avenue of writing and doing all these things, running has inspired a lot of the creative ideas that I've had and that I've tried to pursue. I think that's super powerful.
Yeah. And like you said, running gives you that opportunity to think about things from a different point of view, because your head's so clear, because you're so unobstructed by, distractions. You get a lot of inspiration from that, whether you're a writer or a musician or a businessman. There are a lot of opportunities for creativity on the running trails. So
I think that's a great place to end. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say. I think I got it all. I think we could talk about intentional living for hours and hours, but we just simply don't have the time. So if there's not anything else you'd like to add, we can wrap it up there.
I think we can wrap it up there.
Thank you guys so much for watching or listening to this week's episode. If you enjoyed, we would appreciate it if you would consider subscribing on the platform on which you are listening to us. This week's quote is one from Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens was an American track and field athlete and 4-time gold medalist in the 1936 Olympic Games. He said, "We all have dreams. In order to make dreams come into reality, it takes an awful lot of determination, dedication, self-discipline, and effort."